Okay, so today we are going to be doing the motor activity log assessment. The purpose of the assessment is to examine how much and how well you use your more affected arm when you're not in the clinic. You'll use two separate rating scales to describe how much and how well you use your weaker arm while you're doing specific activities. Please note that you can give half ratings if that best describes your performance of the activity in question. If for some reason you do not perform the task, we will try to determine why. We will first discuss how much you do each of the activities with your weaker arm, then we will discuss how well you do them using your weaker arm. It's important that you realize these questions are about what you actually do outside of the lab, not what you think you might be able to do with your weaker arm. There are no right answers, no wrong answers, simply select the ratings you believe best describe what you do. Please understand I must follow a script with this procedure. Do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. So, this is the amount scale that we'll be using. And this is just the frequency of the activities that I'm going to ask you about. Next, we'll do the how well scale, and that is more of the quality of the movements that you did. Okay, so let's begin. And I just want to remind you these questions are about what you actually do, not what you think you can do. So we're going to consider activities that you've done in the last week when you're answering these questions. So, did you turn on the light with a light switch using your weaker arm?
3.
Okay, so you believe that you used your weaker arm about half as much as you did before the stroke?
Yes.
Okay. And how often did you open a drawer using your weaker arm?
2.
You used your weaker arm, but did the activity most of the time with your stronger arm?
Yes.
Okay. And how often did you remove an item of clothing from a drawer using your weaker arm?
2.
So you sometimes used your weaker arm, but did the activity most of the time with your stronger arm?
Yes, that sounds correct.
Okay. How often did you pick up a phone using your weaker arm?
3.
Okay. So you used your weaker arm about half as much as before the stroke.
Yes.
Okay. How often did you wipe off a kitchen counter or other surface using your weaker arm?
2.
Okay. So you would say sometimes you used your weaker arm, but you did the activity most of the time using your stronger arm?
Yes.
Okay. How often did you get out of a car using your weaker arm? And to clarify, this is only the movement needed to get your body from sitting to standing outside the car once the door is open.
3.
Okay. So you would say you used your weaker arm about half as much as before the stroke?
Yes.
How often did you open the refrigerator using your weaker arm?
2.5.
Okay. So you would say you did the activity somewhere in between, sometimes using the weaker arm and about half as much of the time as before the stroke? Okay. How often did you open a door by turning a doorknob or handle using your weaker arm?
2.
2? Okay. So you would say sometimes you used your weaker arm, but did the activity most of the time with your stronger arm?
Yes.
Okay. And how often did you use a TV remote control using your...
Out of 1.
Okay. So you would say occasionally you used your weaker arm, but only very rarely.
Yes.
Okay. And how often did you wash your hands using your weaker arm?
3.
Okay. So you would say you used your weaker arm about half as much as before the stroke?
Yes.
To wash your hands? Okay. Excellent. So now we will use the how well scale, and I will explain that scale to you. So, for these questions, remember I'm asking you to rate something different on this scale than I did on the amount scale. Before you were supposed to rate how much you used your more affected arm. Now I would like you to rate how well you used your more affected arm, if you did use it. For example, you might have used your more affected hand to pick up a glass and drink only rarely. Then you might be at a 1.5 or 2. However, when you did use it, the use of your hand was really quite good, maybe a 3.5. Is the difference between the two types of ratings I'm asking you to make clear?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. So now I'll ask you the same questions, but you'll use this scale instead. So how well did you turn on a light with a light switch when you did it?
4.
Okay. So you would say the movements made by the weaker arm were almost normal, but not quite as fast or accurate as normal?
Yes.
And how well did you open a drawer with your weaker arm?
A 3.
Okay. So you would say your weaker arm was useful for the purpose indicated, but movements were slow or were made with only some effort?
Yes.
Okay. And how well did you remove an item of clothing from a drawer?
4.5.
Okay. So you were somewhere in between the movements being almost normal and just as good as before the stroke?
Yes.
Okay. And how well did you pick up a phone using your weaker arm?
5.
Okay. So you think that when you did do it, the ability was as good as before the stroke?
Yes.
Okay. And how well did you wipe off a kitchen counter or other surface?
3.
A 3? Okay. So you would say the weaker arm was used for the purpose indicated, but the movements were slow or with only a little effort?
Yes.
Okay. And how well did you get out of a car?
3.5.
Okay. So somewhere in between your weaker arm being used for the purpose, but the movements were a little bit slow, and being almost normal?
Yes.
And how well did you open a refrigerator?
4.
4, that's pretty good. So the movements made by the weaker arm were almost normal, but not quite as fast or accurate as normal?
Yes.
Okay. And how well did you open a door by turning a doorknob or handle?
3.
Okay. So those movements were fair?
Yes.
Okay. And how well did you use a TV remote control when you did use it?
2.
Okay. So you would say that the weaker arm helped you a little bit during the activity, but you definitely needed help from the stronger arm?
Yeah.
Okay. And how well did you wash your hands using both arms?
3.
Or using your unaffected arm?
Yeah, probably about
affected.
3.
About a 3? Okay. So you would say the weaker arm was used for the purpose indicated, but the movements were slow or made with only some effort?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. That concludes this part of the assessment.